questions from the audience? Questions around how did you decide what format?
I thought a long time before I started making videos about this, because like I worked with Freddie W. I know he did lots of silly, crazy special effects, and I probably could have done what John and Hank do with Crash Course. The two big.
Are you for sale?
The two big reasons I think that I decided not to do that, and it was a conscious decision. I think it was an important thing. It's not just that. I happen to find, I think a lot of people, like, if you look at, you watch PBS Nova programs, a lot of things have these really super fancy special effects to explain science. And I think in many ways it's intimidating, and it's trying to make science, like, exciting by making it flashy rather than by making it interesting. And that applies to not just science, but anything else you're trying to share with people. So my thought was that I don't want to try to make science flashy it's flashy to catch people's attention. I wanted to, like, actually share the core of it. And to me, like, it's stick figures and drawing basically is a way where you can feel like I'm sitting down or Vi, like you're sitting next to us and we're just explaining something to you on the back of a napkin, and that's really kind of and the other really important reason to do drawings is that it's a lot faster and less expensive.
Also, a really obvious thing is do what you're really good at. I mean, Henry's a really good explainer and a really good artist and animator, and the Vlog Brothers are really good at talking to camera and having a personality, and Vi's a really talented musician and uses music, and my background is a journalist, so of course I'm going to be journalistic about it, and I'm sure we'll do all sorts of things. But you're also, like, you're really good at talking and writing, you're a good writer, so you've got these scripts. So think about what you're good at, and then use that to achieve your ends.
Do any of you have a channel that you have in the works that is education related?
I'm planning on doing history of clothing. And I was wondering how you separate periods, because it's going to be really hard for me, I think, to also integrate history with clothing.
That sounds cool. We try not to separate periods too much, or at least if we do, we try to acknowledge that that's a historical construct. Like, no one woke up during the Renaissance and was like, man, this Renaissance is kicking. And no one ever was like, man, it sure is great to live in the New Kingdom in ancient Egyptian civilization. They were just living like us, and that stuff almost always gets named in retrospect. And often is named very problematically, as the Renaissance is, because, like, the Islamic world was doing just fine before the Renaissance. We try to not imagine history that way, and a lot of that came from my wife, because she's an art historian, and that's a big deal in art history these days, is taking down these ideas of, this was the Impressionist period, and this was the neoclassical period, and all that stuff. And trying to view things in a broader historical context. So I guess I'd just encourage you to try to look not just at the history of what was happening to human beings, but what was also the history of science, the history of philosophy, the history of mathematics, what was being discovered at that time, the history of the climate, how those things shaped the way that people dressed. I mean, the example I always use of that is that the Romans associated pants with, like, a lack of cultural sophistication, and their sort of definition of barbarism was people who wore pants, and then they expanded northward into Europe, and all of a sudden they started wearing pants. So there's lots of different ways to approach it.
All the way back there with the color.
So my question is, there were some Vlog Brothers videos a couple years ago where you talked about like, the point of education is to learn how to think about big questions and how to approach questions like that. And I wonder how sort of aware you are of doing that versus providing information, like how much you think about balancing those two things.
I'd like to hear from everybody else on that. but I'll answer first. So, I mean, I think there are 2 points. One is to learn how to think about stuff, but the other equally important thing is to learn what to think about. So there's a lot of uninteresting things to think about, like Kim Kardashian, and we have to make a decision what to think about, and that's our decision to make every nanosecond of every day. Sometimes it doesn't feel like it's our decision, sometimes it doesn't feel like we're free to choose what we think about, but we are. And every minute that Henry spends thinking about physics is a minute that's helpful to us, and every minute, frankly, that he spends thinking about something else is a minute that's not quite as helpful to me. So I want people to learn how to think, but I also want them to learn to think about what to think about.
I think I'm going to respectfully disagree that Kim Kardashian is not interesting, right? Okay. But I'm just going to keep going down this road because, like, I think that what has to exist in order for everybody in this room, for when we say Kim Kardashian, to go, oh yeah, totally, yeah, Kim Kardashian. Like, that is an amazing cultural and technological achievement that we have reached, and I think that there is a lot that you can say and you can explain and you can deliver the facts about how we got there and how we have gotten to the point where fame is the kind of fame that Kim Kardashian has, but that there is no answer at the end of that road. There's no like, well, and now we're done. Here we are. There is a whole other set of questions about like, well, so where does fame go from now on? And, you know, how does television continue to play a role in fame? And how does technology continue to play a role in fame? And I think that there are ways for you to talk about, just to keep inflating Kim Kardashian's fame, there are ways for you to talk about Kim Kardashian and how she happened that indicate questions. So I think for me, that's where that relationship is.
I think it can also be really useful not to tell people how to think or teach them thinking techniques, but just tell them how other people have thought. So, I mean, I have a big advantage in that because I'm talking to real scientists all the time and just seeing some real scientists all the time and saying, oh, I see what they did, I see what they're like, I see how they did that. You can then take that approach and apply it to what you're doing. So I think sometimes just watching people think, or sometimes in some of these guys' videos they'll talk about, you know, this is what Einstein did, or this is what so-and-so did, and just looking at the example of how other people have thought can be enough to help you develop your own way of thinking. So you don't have to sit there and say, this is how you think, this is how you should tackle a problem. Just look at how someone else tackled a problem and see if that suits you.
I would say this is definitely one of the biggest things that I struggle with and think about a lot when I'm making videos is that I don't want to be conveying facts. Like, you can just go to Wikipedia if you want facts. You can find out facts any way you want, and really what I try to do is to kind of figure out a way of bringing interesting facts together in a way that people may not have thought about them before, and particularly with physics in a way that people may not have thought to help try to teach them before. Because a lot of times physicists just, once they know something, they don't really care to figure out a good way of explaining it to you because they're happy with themselves knowing it. Or they just try to teach math, and while math is really, really important in physics, it's not necessarily something that everybody should have to learn in order to understand the beauty of physics or any of these other things. So I have like a really big kind of criteria that I never want to just say facts. I always want to either explain why we know something or why it's interesting or what it implies, like, or all three of those if possible. I think those are really important things to do. And to never also be satisfied with kind of thinking about something or explaining something in a way that other people have explained it to me, but to really I try to go into and of course then, I'm not sure how that translates to the people watching it now, but I try to look at things and say, is this really the best way of thinking about it, or is there maybe another way that's easier and more intuitive to understand?
Before you go out and make a video, then do you go and see, if you're thinking about a particular physics topic, do you research and see how other people explained it so you can
Sometimes, although there's not really that much diversity in the way certain physics things are. There's a lot of, not to get into the specifics here, but in physics in particular, there are a lot of things that are explained the same way all the time because some famous person in the past explained it that way. Whether it be Einstein, or Richard Feynman, or there are things that somehow have gotten into like the collective education system from like the lowest level, elementary school. Elementary school doesn't necessarily do physics, but when you do physics, science things in elementary school, all the way up to graduate school, there are certain things that are just kind of done in the same way because that was the way they were done at some point in the past. And now that, for example, it's been over 100 years since the discovery of the theory of relativity, we still teach relativity, the way Einstein thought about it. And that's not really the way people think about it today. And so, I mean, it would be kind of like, teaching, do we teach about computers the way computers were thought about in 1935? No, we don't. We teach about computers in a very different way because computers are very different now. They do different things for us. So I think that bringing things kind of up to speed and asking questions, and this is the beautiful thing about being online and not having to deal with curricula and school boards and university standards and tests and all these things. Like we can take these things and go somewhere with them that other people can't. And if we don't take that opportunity, then I think we've somewhat failed. And that's where I look at online courses like Udacity and Coursera and some of these like edX, a lot of these have like huge amounts of money that have been poured into them. And I look at them and I say they're trying to do really good things, and I think that they're just not quite realizing how much freedom they have, and that they should just run with it and go so much farther than they are. And so that's what I try to do, and hopefully I succeed sometimes.
So personally, in order to learn something, I have to make something, and I have to get feedback. Now, I know that there are, Udacity you mentioned, they can actually put feedback for me. The exposure thing is great. It gives me all this energy. Then I want to do something with it. And I was wondering if there's a model that you think is practical for that. Like one thing I thought about is peer grading. I feel like that can work really well for our community.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that some of the models that these online courses like Udacity are using are actually very good models, but they just haven't quite taken it. They haven't taken it to the next level. They're very much in like the kind of the beta stage, and it's great that like we get to see them and play around with them when they're in that stage. But like the thing that I would like to see is like huge levels of like experimentation, doing crazy things that you can do online, and rather than just kind of taking a university course and making it on the internet.
What's the next?
Well, I don't know. If I did, I would be doing it. Ideas like peer grading or other sorts of social involvement. I mean, ultimately, I'm not entirely convinced that the internet is necessarily like the future of education either. Like that's another question, which is a bigger question. It's definitely the future of like transmitting information. Like the internet is a great way of transmitting information. I'm not sure it's a great way to learn. A lot of times, I learn best by taking some information that I may or may not have known already, and then going and working with it and trying to get my own understanding of how it fits together. And I think that, and then trying to put that together into a picture of what I already know. And that's like, when people learn things, there's a combination of getting new information and then actually incorporating that into this, the kind of picture you have of the world in your mind.
Yeah, I don't think education happens just on the internet. I don't think it ever can. I don't think we can ever recreate that process on the internet. And I think if we're trying to recreate it, we're doing it wrong instead of just doing something else. Because there's still going to be, like, we still have these physical labs that we get to lead, so we can still do some of that stuff. But I actually think that Khan Academy is doing some, and I don't know why you want to speak to this, but I think that they're doing some really interesting stuff on the front in terms of building those resources outside of the videos that allow deeper engagement.
Yeah, we are trying to do that. We think peer tutoring is an extremely useful way to learn for both sides of that. So we're trying to test out things like, great, someone in your class understands that someone else is struggling, let's put those two people together and see what happens, and then they're both gonna do better. So that's something we're testing, and it's exciting to me. But certainly, we don't know the answer, and I think everyone's trying a lot of different approaches.
All the way backstage.
I'm wondering, how do you sort through all the many ideas that you have to decide what you're going to actually make a video on? Because I know that everyone has so many things they probably want to put out there, but you have to choose just one to focus on for your time period. How do you choose that?
most challenging for Mike?
Lots of arguing, actually. I mean, the beauty of our show is that it's like we can present sort of an idea and try to test it out. And the way that we test it out is by having a conversation and just seeing whether or not you can have an interesting conversation about it. And if you can, then that's the sign for us that other people will also be able to have a really interesting conversation. And that if one of us says something, it's so that the people who make the shows, I'm talking about me, and there's a director whose name is Andrew. When one of us says something to the other, and then the other of us says, yeah, totally. That's not like, that's, you know, we take that as a sign to be like, and as far as where those things come from, I mean, I spend my life staring at Chrome, so, Google Chrome, not polished metal. But that might be better for my eyes. And so I